Governments are no longer denying it. The military are no longer denying it. And even mainstream media no longer denies it. They're here and have been here for a very long time. The Mutual UFO Network has been on the front lines uncovering the truth since 1969. And now we're sharing the truth with you. Welcome to MUFON's What's Up with hosts Katie Grabowski, Christopher DiPerno, and Katie Cook, exclusively on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Wondering what's up? So are we.
What's up? It is Thursday night. Welcome back and Happy New Year to everybody. We are going to have such a great year this year. I'm so excited. You are listening to MUFON What's Up Radio, the show that says discovery starts with curiosity and curiosity starts with MUFON. I'm your host, Katie Grabowski, the Colorado State Director for MUFON. We have a great show for you tonight. We have Mike Clelland. He will be here talking about UFOs, owls, synchronicities, and so many fun things. But first, we're going to do some UFO news and chit-chat and all that. And all this great content is brought to you by KGRADB.com. And as always, we endorse MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, who's on the front lines asking that all-important question, are we alone in the universe? So we're just going to jump right into it this week because I'm excited about this tonight. So I'll introduce my co-host, Katie Cook. Welcome, Katie. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Katie. I am so excited for this show. I honestly couldn't sleep last night because I know it's going to be one of my favorite interviews. So
yeah, me too. And I have the owl over my shoulder, just for Mike. And then we have Christopher DiPerno. Chris DiPerno, welcome to the show.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Oh man, what a great show tonight. This book, The Messenger, you got to get it. I can't put it down. Every time I read it, it's just an amazing thing. We're going to have a great interview with the author of that book, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I tell you, all last week putting away Christmas decorations and stuff, I had Mike's audiobook going, his Messengers, the Blue Book, and I'm telling you, you have got to listen to this book. It is so great. We have a birthday among us this week, a birthday week. I wonder who that could be. Katie, I made you a little special little video. Amanda, if you want to roll that little happy birthday video for Katie.
yay!
Look at that.
What do you think?
That is flashy. You will definitely get the room's attention when you walk in.
That's the idea. Yeah. So my husband got me this as a birthday present, Happy New Year, present. Does he know me well or what? It's perfect, right?
That's really cute.
Speaking of cool things, Katie,
you won't get lost with that jacket. I can.
Well, let's hope not. That's probably why he really got it for me. Katie, I understand you had a UFO sighting over Christmas.
Right. Yeah. The big hit of the Christmas day. All my kids come over. I have 5 grown kids and 1 grandson. And my grandson, oh my gosh, I had to share it because it was like the big hit of the day. So Amanda, you want to roll that little clip? $15 on Amazon. And I was like, they work so good sitting here on my desk now. You just charge it up, plug it in, and you do this and it goes. It's so much fun, and it's like you have like superpowers or something because you can control it with your hand. So we had a blast with that.
So cool. I'm jealous. Very jealous.
How little things amuse us. Isn't it?
That's right. It's the little things in life.
Yes,
Chris, what about you for Christmas?
Well, as New York, it's kind of strange up here because we were on lockdown, and because I have a new granddaughter, and we got to make sure COVID is running rampant up here. But I will tell you this, it's one of the best Christmases I ever had because it was just myself and my wife. And we shared cooking together that day. We kind of, experienced both of us just alone. And I thought it was one of the best Christmas I ever had because, here's my wife working with me side by side, making a nice dinner for just the two of us. Romantic, educational, the whole bit. What a great Christmas.
Oh, I love that. That's really good.
Romantic. That is great. That sounds special. Awesome. So,
yeah, then she threw me out of the house.
Oh, no. All right. So, Cookie, what do you have to kick us off today?
Well, let me tell you first what I did over Christmas. I went on a cruise because I was a little bit crazy, apparently. Right. So my husband and I, we decided just to get away, and everybody's like, don't do it because, you'll definitely get COVID. But we came back fine. We did. It's a little bit weird to be on a cruise and wear like 2 masks the whole time, but we did it. Amanda, I've actually got a couple pictures I want to show you because that's us. I mean, look at that water. That was in Bimini.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I wish I'd had more time there because, there's some stuff I could have looked at under the water, but didn't have time for that. But look at that water. I mean, that's actually in Nassau. It was like glass. It was so clear. And then, of course, you have to have the, mandatory quintessential picture of toes, with the sun in the background. So
cocktail in hand.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was a really nice Christmas. I'm glad we got the cruise in before they're shutting it all down. But let's start off with the meme for the week, a little UFO meme. I found a cute one for New Year's. For anyone who's just listening, there's 2 aliens. One says, "What are they celebrating?" The other one says, "Their planet made a full circle around their star." And the first alien says, "I told you, they're not intelligent." Well, I don't care. I like New Year's. All right, on to our paranormal pop of the week. This week we have the Mothman.
Ooh, I like that one.
He looks menacing, but he's really very sweet. Big hunk of vanilla. And I chose this pop for this week before I knew that our guest would be Mike Clelland. And of course, Mike actually mentions the Mothman in at least one of his books. Coincidence? I think not. And finally, check out one of my, and you can order those at paranormalpops.com. Now, check out one of my favorite Middle Tennessee artists, Renfro Originals. Look at this beautiful stained glass. That's all made by hand. As you can see, the aliens, they're a little into the ladies. So ladies, watch your backs. But you can find Renfro Originals across all socials as Renfro Originals. And also the website is renfrooriginals.com. Say that fast a few times. I just love that. I think that's so cool. All right, Chris, what's happening in the world of UFO news?
Well, we got some great stories for this week. Our first one is NASA preparing to announce the greatest discovery we ever knew. Has NASA hired 24 theologians, including a priest, to prepare the human race for possible alien discovery, like we didn't already know. The news is reporting that the U.S. Space Agency has hired a British priest in a bid to understand how the discovery of aliens would change the way we see the universe. The Reverend Dr. Andrew Davison, a priest and theologian at the University of Cambridge, is among 24 theologians to have taken part in a NASA-sponsored program at Princeton University. Now, folks, I want you to remember this. This reported program started back in 2014 and now is on the front page of every newspaper. I don't think this thing just started. All right? So keep that in mind. This program aims to see how the world's major religions would react to the news that life exists in worlds beyond our own. As per the media outlet Princeton, has described this as building the bridges understanding with theologians, scientists, scholars, and policymakers. Good luck with the policymakers as they think together and to inform the public. It aims to answer questions such as, where do we draw the line between the human and the alien? And that's a damn good question. And what are the possibilities of life in other places? The British priest revealed that he is now set to publish a book next year titled Astrobiology and Christian Doctrine, with notes that the world is getting closer to finding life on other planets like we didn't already know. Please remember that this is an old program from NASA, and the people hired were employed by CTI, at Princeton, and not NASA. NASA only supplied the funding for the program years ago. We called NASA, and they have not responded to us yet. Separately, Carl Pritchard, the former head of NASA's Astrobiology Institute, added that the possibility of discovering alien life is very high. They're here, folks, as there are more than 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And now with that, I want you to remember what Bill Nelson, the head of NASA, stated about UFOs, and he believes they're real. Amanda, please.
Now, I know what you've seen is what those Navy pilots saw in 2004, and there have been some 300 sightings since then. And I've talked to those pilots, and they know they saw something, and their radars locked onto it. And then all of a sudden it was here on the surface, and then it's there. And they don't know what it is, and we don't know what it is. We hope it's not an adversary here on Earth that has that kind of technology. But it's something. And so this is a mission that we're constantly looking. Who is out there? Who are we? How did we get here? How did we become as we are? How did we develop? How did we civilize? And are those same conditions out there in a universe that has billions of other suns in billions of other galaxies? It's so large, I can't conceive it.
It was suggested to me by many different people. They did want your comment on what you think the fighter pilot saw. I think most people saw that 60 Minutes piece, and there were a lot of newspaper pieces about whether or not it was Russia or China, or perhaps more likely some extraterrestrial intelligent beings. What is your theory? You've heard a lot of options. Which one do you think is the most credible, if you can choose?
My personal opinion is that the universe is so big, and now there are even theories that there might be other universes. And if that's the case, who am I to say that planet Earth is the only location of a life form that is civilized and organized like ours?
Are we getting ready for disclosure, Cookie?
We're closer than we've ever been. I know that for sure. I don't think any of us will ever know if disclosure is going to be exactly what we want it to be. It's already sort of unfolding, but just even hearing him talk that openly, I always hoped in my lifetime I would hear, someone like that just coming right out with it, and it's happening and it's here. I'm torn between we're not far enough along and then going, I can't believe how far we've come.
Right.
Do you feel the same way, kind of?
Yeah. Yeah. With the James Webb Telescope, I mean, it's coming, and I'm thinking in this next year, if they find oxygen on some of these planets out there, we're going to know something's breathing that in and out. That means something's living there. So it's coming soon, I think. That's what I think. Yeah.
Well, folks, I just want them to remind themselves that back in World War II, we were seeing these things. We know the Chinese never had anything like this because we had to bring fighter planes over to defend China. So you can forget about China having this type of technology. And the Russians didn't have it because they were borrowing our stuff too during World War II. And we were seeing Foo Fighters and all kinds of objects going even back to the 1800s, even before that, all through our history. We have seen incredible things in the sky. So this idea that it could be an adversary is just some kind of fluff they're putting out there until they can finally tell us what the real deal is. Hopefully that comes soon. All right. I got another story for you, and Katie, you just mentioned it. James Webb Space Telescope launches into space. On Christmas Day 2021, NASA's James Webb Space Telescope successfully launched from Europe's space in French Guiana. What a place to send a telescope up. But hey, who am I? The $10 billion observatory and the latest and most complex scientific probe ever sent into space is bound for an orbit about 1 million miles from Earth. Wow. Once there, the Webb's mission is to explore the history of the cosmos by observing light from the first galaxies in the early universe. I got to tell you, how do you know which is an early universe or a late universe? We'll let them figure that out. The state-of-the-art instruments will provide unmatched resolution of these distant galaxies. The promise of the Webb is not what we know that we will discover. It's what we don't know yet and don't understand, can't fathom about our universe that we hopefully discover. And do aliens exist? They put that in there too. The James Webb Telescope could answer all that. The world's most powerful telescope is set to profoundly transform scientists' understanding of the universe and our place in it. Scientists say it's a new era of astronomy. I agree. What can the James Webb Telescope do? The instruments will give humankind the first glimpse of the infinite universe as it existed, when the earliest galaxies are believed to have formed. Let's watch this short video. Amanda?
Historic launch. Now, Adam Frank is an astrophysicist at the University of Rochester and the author of the book Light of the Stars, Alien Worlds, and the Fate of the Earth. It's so great to see you. Listening to Kristen describe all of this, is it overstating things to say this could change the way we see the universe?
I don't think so that at all. Well, first of all, Merry Christmas. And it seemed like Santa was riding a rocket today for all of us. It's not an understatement. I mean, you think about Hubble Space Telescope, which was the most successful scientific instrument in the history of humanity, how much that changed. It saw alien planets that we'd never seen before. It showed us the environments of black holes. It really, Hubble... It literally every Marvel movie you see when they have a scene in space, they're using the Hubble Space Telescope image. So James Webb will do the exact same thing, but it's 100 times more powerful. So yeah, it's gonna rewire our understanding of the universe.
It's like mind-blowing. So you say it's 100 times more powerful than the Hubble telescope, and it sees in infrared. So what does that mean for astronomers and people who are going to be using these images?
Well, there's two things. So, infrared light is light that's, longer than the wavelengths of light that our eyes are sensitive to. And for astronomers, that's important for two reasons. Because one, it allows us to see very far back to literally when the universe was just a little teeny tiny baby. And there's so much about how we went from the chaos of the Big Bang to now the structured, orderly universe that's got things like galaxies and stars and planets in it. And infrared light is really the only way to really see those baby galaxies. So that's one thing we're going to see. We're going to see literally the dawn of time. And then the other thing that's super important is exoplanets. We now know, thanks to Hubble and other telescopes, that every star you see in the sky hosts a family of worlds, of alien worlds. And with the James Webb telescope, we're going to be able to see the atmospheres. We're going to be able to peer into the atmospheres of those planets and see what they're made of: carbon dioxide, oxygen, sulfur. Perhaps even be able to see whether there's life on those worlds by seeing whether or not there's chemicals in the atmosphere that would indicate a biosphere. So, that's pretty amazing.
Wow. The James Webb Telescope, a $10 billion marvel that could be just the thing to show us what worlds are just like. Cookie, what do you think?
I think it's amazing. What really blows me away is what this thing is powerful, or what it can do, the power it has, how powerful it is, and yet it looks like somebody just kind of crinkled up some tinfoil. Am I the only one? I'm looking at that thing and I'm like, you're going to get shredded in space, and you're $10 million, and
maybe
we're
they
counting
used that
on
stuff
you.
from Roswell to make it. Who knows?
I know that, seriously. That's what I wonder, right? Didn't they say you could crinkle it? It just popped right back out and took shape. But no, this is going to change our lives. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're all going to remember the moment this information started coming back. I mean, it's 100 times more powerful than Hubble or something. My mind can't even go there.
Katie, you're pretty excited about this, aren't you?
I'm very excited about it. I think, those first photos will be coming back in a couple months. And, I think that, it's going to change our views, our world views. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's our news for the week.
Great reporting as usual, Chris. All right,
Thank you,
Katie. Katie G, do we have a case of the week?
We do. Amanda, do you want to run case of the week? Okay, so the case of the week, knowing who our guest was going to be, I tend to lucid dream a lot, right? And so in my dream, I was like, I wonder how many cases in MUFON CMS has the keyword owl. So went into CMS, typed in owl. There's right now in CMS that doesn't include the historical Pandora files or the Mars program. This is just in CMS. We have 91 cases that have owl interaction. And so I took the most recent owl case and I created a fun video to make it entertaining and narrated it. So Amanda, if you'd like to run the case of the week video, and it ties right in nicely with our guest. MUFON Case of the Week, case number 119222, submitted November 15th, 2021. This is a historical case that occurred the first week of July in 1966. It's a Category 3 case out of Palm Springs, Florida, Miami-Dade. The ERT was involved. It's never too late to get those historical cases into MUFON that contain some interesting information. It was the summer of 1966. I don't remember the exact date that it happened. It was near the 4th of July. That night, my mother and father were playing cards with some friends in a community called Palm Springs North, located in Dade County. Doug was my parents' friend's son. He was 13 years old, and I was 11 years old at the time. Our fathers worked together as Army Special Forces Green Beret. My father was a master sergeant, and Doug's father was a captain. They both worked full-time at the Dade County Armory, and both were of German descent. The night started where Doug and I were riding our bikes all over Palm Springs North, which is a small community and was the last development in the county. Everything west was woods and Everglades. It was very late at night, and we had just left a small store and had bought snacks for us to eat while at our favorite place on the first lake. On the way there, I had spotted a white owl with big, black, oval eyes. I stopped and just stared at it, and it stared back. It felt like I was being drawn to it, until Doug, who was in front of me, stopped and asked me if I was coming. I took my eyes off the owl to say yes, but when I looked back at the owl, it was gone. As soon as we arrived at the empty lot on the lake shore, we both saw a disc-like craft glowing white. It was slowly landing into the woods across the lake. It didn't make a sound while landing. Soon it disappeared into the trees. We rode our bike to the other side of the lake, where we took a dirt road that went into the woods. Then all of a sudden there was a faint light coming from above us. Doug and I woke up on the shore of the lake we had just left. This all took place late at night, and when we came to, it was early morning. We both had no idea what had happened to us. Confused, we made it back to Doug's house. We were worried that our parents would be very mad at us for being so late, but nothing. Our mothers were sleeping and our fathers were at the dining room table talking. Not one of them said anything to us about being late. Doug and I would never speak about that event again. Meanwhile, the next day, my neighbor asked me to go to the garden in the woods to help him. This is something I did often. When we arrived at the location where the garden was, we found the garden had been destroyed by something very hot. Every plant was dry to the bone and brown. I didn't put the garden incident together until I remembered the UFO that landed there that evening. Everything came to me in 2017, along with the garden being destroyed. After remembering the UFO incident, I tried to locate Doug. I found his sister on Facebook for Palm Springs North homeowners, and when I asked her about her brother Doug, she had told me that he had passed away 2 years before, and I wasn't comfortable asking her if Doug had ever said anything about that night. So the investigator in this case, in talking with the witness about the event, said he was clear and honest and what had happened to him and how it had changed his life. We feel that his experience was genuine and his description of the craft he saw was authentic and as complete as his memory could afford. We have classified his abduction report as a substantial evidence case. We are recommending to close this case with a disposition of unknown UAV. So that is my case of the week, and it tags right along with our wonderful guests that we will have on in the second hour.
Very cool.
What a case. What a case.
I love those historical cases that come into MUFON. I know, for listeners out there, really, it's never too late to get those in there. I mean, my favorite decade to research is the 70s. So, aging myself, but it's true.
I love all the visuals you put in there. That was cool.
It was absolutely amazing. Just to let people know, a Category 3 is a very highly suspicious of an encounter or an abduction. when we categorize cases of MUFON. So when we say category 3, that's a hot one.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great case of the week. Hey,
Yeah.
Cookie, you got a book recommendation for us, don't you?
I do, yes. And it also ties into the guest that we're about to bring on. I would like to recommend American Psychic by Marla Fries. Marla's a good friend, a very gifted psychic medium, but she also has a great interest in UFOs. She's had her own experiences. And, you know, she and I have been meaning to connect on the UFO topic. She's wanted to talk to me about that. And we just haven't found the time to connect. And then, you know, in listening to Mike Clelland's book, and of course he mentions Marla, and I'm like, there's another synchronicity. These keep happening as I'm listening to his book, so many things. And I took that as a sign that, one, that I should recommend the book to you, and that she and I really do need to connect on this UFO topic. Also, if you're interested in how trauma can play a role in all things paranormal, this really is a must read. But it was the synchronicity more than anything. And I thought maybe we could all talk a little bit about synchronicities before we bring our guest on, because it's one of the biggest themes in his book. So I don't know if I should go first or you guys, but I know we've all had some pretty interesting things. So I have so many, but the one that really stands out to me the most that I love to share is when my husband and I started dating. This has been about 7 years ago, I guess now. And we were both pretty freshly divorced. And, you know, everyone's like, just stay single for years, you know, like don't settle down. Well, you know, we're those goobers. We went on one date and we're like, you're it, you know, and he really hadn't had a chance to be single very long at all. And his friends were really giving him a lot of stuff for that. But he has always felt like his brother gave him signs over the years, you know, kind of guided him. I should tell you, his brother passed away when he was only 14. My husband, Adam, was only 11 when it happened. And so, you know, Adam and I were just still trying to get to know each other, talking on the phone for hours a day. And at one point he said, "Oh, when's your birthday?" I said, "January 8th. And he's like, "Okay, what year?" I said, 1971. He's like, "I'm going to need to call you back." So I was like, okay, maybe he's a big Elvis fan. I share a birthday with Elvis and Stephen Hawking and David Bowie. It's a cool birthday. Well, anyway, he calls me back and he's like, that was my brother's birthday.
Wow.
He's like, you know, I know we're moving pretty fast, but I'm kind of taking that as a sign that, you know, this is okay. And I said, okay, so his birthday was January 8th. He said, yeah, January 8th, 1971. So we're like, wow. Well, he texted me a little later in the day. He's like, what time of day were you born? Because I'd really freak out if it was the same time. Well, for some reason on my birth certificate, I should have put a picture up for you guys, but it doesn't say the time. I was born in England. 71 apparently was like the Stone Ages and nobody had a pen. So I'm like, you know, you can't put the time in. But we guess somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m. because my mother was in rush hour traffic and then got to the hospital and apparently I kind of flew out. And so I told him and he said, well, thank God if it had been the same time as my brother, I just would have freaked out. I said, well, what time was your brother born? He said 12:30 in the afternoon. I said, where? He said, New York. Well, I'll let you guys do the math between New York and London. So, you know, here he is having a crisis, wondering if he's moving too fast with this girl. And it turns out the girl is born the same month, same day, same year, possibly the same hour as his brother that has a tendency to send him messages. I think that's a pretty good one. So
that's
all right.
a pretty good one. Yes.
Yeah.
Who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Katie.
Well, so I have a half brother, and he's quite a bit older, and he has some severe mental illness. He had a rough life in and out of state hospitals, burnt down a couple houses. It was a pretty traumatic past for us. So there's a lot of hurt and fear and anger towards that. And when he passed, I didn't realize he passed, but started having these 333 synchronicities. I'd wake up every night at 3:33 on the nose. And I couldn't figure out what it was until 3 months later, another 3, that my brother had passed. They put him in an unmarked grave and I had bought him a headstone. Well, later that year, it was my birthday. Coming from Illinois, you know, you're kind of born into the Chicago Cubs dynasty. So I was across the street at my neighbor's house enjoying my birthday, had my Cubs hoodie on, had my Cubs glass. And I've lived in this house here that I'm in right now since 1988. I've never seen a bald eagle in my life. I'm sitting out there. I look at the back of the Cubs glass, and there's an eagle on the back with the date. And I thought, I wonder if that's the year Gary passed. And so I ran across the street, got his death certificate. And yes, that was the same year Gary passed. The eagle flew over my head. And in that, I had a picture of his headstone. And Amanda, if you want to show that picture, the first one, it has the year. So that little glass there, that emblem with the eagle says 2006. On his headstone's 2006. And I had forgot that I put a bald eagle on his headstone. So that was interesting. A couple weeks later, I went to a paranormal conference in Ohio, and we were a little early to go to the airport to come home. So we stopped at this lake. And if you want to bring up that second picture, I was drawn to this bench, and I beelined it over to this bench. And I thought, wouldn't it be weird if Gary's name is like engraved on this bench? Not to mention, when we pulled into the lake, this was our rental car. It had 333 on it. I get over to the bench, and there's this plaque that says "Love, Laugh, Remember," and then the last Gary. And then when I got home to DIA and was driving in my car, I had 3 songs come on my Pandora back to back. Fly Like an Eagle, and what are the other ones? I can't see into my glasses. Fly Like an Eagle, Learning to Fly, and then my brother's song that I always related to him, the Rolling Stones, Give Me Shelter. So I don't know how synchronicities work, but it was just a week of in my face bald eagles and 333s, and it was just the most synchronicity. And what it meant to me was that it was an apology from the other side, like, I'm okay now. I'm sorry for all that. I'm doing good now. So yeah, it was pretty powerful for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, me being a skeptic, there was an incident that took place that really changed my whole belief on psychics and all this stuff. Because when somebody said, let's do this or let's do that, I go, yeah, right. Okay, whatever. But I will tell you this. I had a good friend by the name of Billy Chapin, who was a police officer working at Department of Public Safety at Ithaca College. And I was having a couple of beers with him the night before. And he says, Chris, I'm off tomorrow. I'm going to a party. He says, when you get off work, why don't you come on and stuff? I said, yeah, Billy, I'll think about it. So that next day I was working my day shift in a patrol car, and I got a call. Billy Chapin had tried to rescue a couple of people who were in the gorge stuck, and he fell into the gorge and got carried away by the river. Absolute hero. So we knew he was gone, and we couldn't find him. We searched for 3 days, absolutely 3 days trying to find him, and we couldn't find him. So somebody mentioned to bring in a psychic. I went, yeah, right. Okay. Well, yeah, that'll work. And I was laughing about it. But they brought in Phil Jordan, who's a known psychic down in the Tioga County area. And he came in and he says, I'm telling you right now, you're going to find him. And I see flowers above him. And of course, me being the sarcastic person that I am, I go, wow, I don't know how many flowers you're going to find in the river. Because that's where he fell into. And he just looked at me and says, you will find him, and there'll be flowers above him. So we decided to do a memorial, had no idea that we were going to find him. Didn't think we were. And we went to the bridge, and everybody kept saying, we got to get him flowers, got to get him flowers, got to get him flowers. And we're going to go, where are we going to put the flowers? There's no, we got to get him flowers. So everybody kept saying there was a strong feeling that we must get him flowers. So we got him a bottle of schnapps, which he loved to drink, and a ring of flowers. And we went to the bridge above the thing, probably 2 miles away from, where the area where he fell in. And we threw the flowers into the river, and we threw the whole bottle of schnapps in the river while we poured it in. And we left. And a fireman who happened to be walking down the side of the thing actually discovered and looked and saw there's the ring of flowers that we threw, and it was just hovering in a place where it shouldn't be hovering. It was just in this pool of water. And why it didn't go downstream, I have no idea. To this day, I can't answer that. But the fireman said, I remember what the psychic said. He took a pole, and sure enough, under those flowers was Billy Chapin.
Wow. Holy cow.
Oh, man. That's really intense. I'm very, very sorry for your loss.
What are the chances?
Thank you for sharing that.
3 Mile River finding the body directly there?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow. That is.
Ooh, more to this world than we know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely believe that for sure. I think this is going to be a really good time to bring in our guest of the week.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So our guest this week is Mike Clelland. Mike Clelland's 2015 book, The Messengers, was met with high praise. In it, he explores the mysterious connection between owls, synchronicities, and UFO abduction. It was his first-hand experiences with these elusive events that have been the foundation for his research. This book is also a personal memoir and a journey of self-discovery. Mike is also considered an expert in the skills of ultralight backpacking and is the author and illustrator of a series of instructional books on advanced outdoor techniques. His website, MikeClelland.com, is a comprehensive resource of his research and creative output. You have to check that out because his artwork in there, oh my goodness, it's so great. After 25 years living in the Rockies, he now lives in the Pacific Northwest. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. I would like to just kind of jump right into some synchronicity. I mean, we're all just talking about synchronicities. If you want to kind of speak on, what synchronicities might be.
So the question is, I don't know what they are. At the same time, so I have 3 books out, and I think all 3 books have synchronicity right on the cover. And the synchronicity aspect to me has been at the forefront of not only my research, but more so my personal experiences with these elusive mysteries. And so synchronicity by definition is there's a Carl Jung had a very kind of complex definition of it. And I'm, like a meaningful coincidence, a coincidence that is meaningful to the observer. And when I talk to people who've had the UFO contact experience, or even just people who've seen a UFO, I will ask them, like, so what, any synchronicities in your life? And they'll often sort of give me this look like, oh, like you have no idea how many synchronicities I have in my life. So there's something connected to the mystery of UFOs and synchronicities. They are somehow intertwined. I wrote an essay, this is going back about 10 years ago. It was for a friend of mine. He was putting out a comprehensive kind of, he put out 3 books, which are excellent, and I'll recommend these here. His name is Alan Green, and the books are volume 1, 2, and 3, but they're called the Sync Book, SYNC, like synchronicity, the Sync books. And they're really, really strong books, and they're just essays that people have written. So I wrote an essay for one of the books, and in that essay, I remember I was kind of working on the essay, and I was this friend of mine who actually helped me edit the essay, and she kind of like was on my high horse, and I said, like, people with UFO experiences, they tend to have more synchronicities than, let's say, Joe Normal. And she kind of rolled her eyes and said, like, oh, like how stupid can you be? Like, anyone on a spiritual journey will have more synchronicities. And she was right. And so that was over a decade ago now. And given that, I have since seen, so like, given what she said, that would mean that UFO contact is a part of a spiritual journey. And that may seem a little bit at odds, but I really, having immersed myself in this, I have come to maybe it's more of an insight into my personality or an insight into my thought process, but I have been looking at the UFO contact experience as a form of spiritual journey. And then part of that, and that goes directly back to my friend Erica and how she said, anyone on a spiritual path will have synchronicities. And I instantly thought, well, that means the UFO experience is part of a spiritual journey. So that may seem lofty, and that may seem out of the bounds of like pragmatic, dry, concrete research, but that's not what I'm interested in. I was totally researching myself in those books, because those books in many ways are me struggling to understand my own experiences.
For sure. That actually leads me to a question I really want to ask you. And that is, I definitely feel like there's a spiritual element to contact. And I mean, if you weren't very spiritual before, you probably will be after. I mean, I feel like it's an experience. If you try to suppress it and forget it, it's going to bubble up in some way or another. So I feel like you're going to be led down that path of searching for a deeper meaning behind everything one way or another. And I'm wondering if you feel like most people that come to you with their stories, even if perhaps initially there was a lot of fear, do you feel like they end up moving in a better direction because they're kind of forced onto this spiritual path? At least most of them, I think. Any thoughts on that?
Well, better direction is a tough one because, like, who knows what's better? I mean, you're adding judgment to say, like, well, something better is good up here and something not better is down lower here. They certainly change the direction of their lives. That's very well understood within anyone who looks into this research, that people who have the UFO contact event will often have this right angle change in the direction of their lives. And that certainly happened to me when I started having. So my initial experiences were not UFO experiences. So I had UFO experiences in my youth and a few kind of odd events throughout my life. But when I was 44 years old, like, I had a set of experiences with an owl, or a series of owls. And then that, in the aftermath of that, I was just flooded with synchronicities. So I had this complete right turn. So what often happens, and this is more, so I'm not looking at a big, like, the UFO lore is this huge, giant, like, wealth of information. There's so many books. There's so much information. I think Alan J. Hynek, someone said, where's the proof of UFOs? Like, what do you got for proof? And he says, where do I back up the truck? So there's so much out there. So trying to so I feel like, in a funny way, I've been very fortunate because of my own obsessions, let's say, that I'm looking at this thin little strand, this narrow little strand that is understood and recognized. I mean, that story you told from MUFON earlier about the boy in Florida who saw an owl just before seeing a UFO, that is right in with the research I'm doing. So I got a little off track here. Where you were asking me, is it how do people's lives change? In the aftermath of this, as I talk to people in this narrow band, I'm not looking at the big giant picture of UFOs. I'm looking at this thin little band of owls and UFOs. And the people who have had these experiences are often healers. Yeah, like, this is a pattern. It's healers. Like, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a nurse, or I'm a psychologist, or I'm a family therapist, or I do. Now, here's this usually takes me a little bit in a talk to get to this point, but you brought it up. This is something I don't know what to make of, this one little bit of this curious data point. People I'm talking to, the people who contact me, for the most part, is saying, Mike, I want to get a hold of you. I had an owl experience. And then oftentimes it's not even a UFO experience. It might be a synchronicity. It might be a powerful connection to death. It might be a spiritual situation. It might be just a kind of a magical, mystical event. But they've had an owl experience and then this magical, mystical event that may or may not involve a UFO. I just write it down. I talk to people on the phone all the time doing this work, and I just write it down in the corner of the page. I just write Reiki, and I just wait. I just wait for them to say it. And I'm like, well, and then they say, well, I just got my Reiki master certificate, my level 3 Reiki master certificate. Or I'll ask, what do you do for work? And they say, I'm a Reiki therapist. Now, it's not 100% of the people who contact me, but it is, I'm going to be really, I don't actually know because I haven't crunched the numbers. I'm only one person, but I would say that it's half the people who contact me are Reiki therapists. Huh. And so you asked, is it better? Well, it's certainly someone working as a healer, whether it's a spiritual healer doing Reiki therapy, or whether it's a pragmatic healer, that's a family therapist or a nurse. So they're embedded into this mystery is that people have a UFO contact experience, their life changes, and they become healers. So that's a That's an estimation of me sort of boiling down the 10 years of research I've done. I would love to crunch the numbers and give you an exact amount of the, like a percentage. I can't do that off the top of my head, but I can say it's a lot of people that are doing healing work that have had this contact experience.
Love that.
Mike, that's absolutely fascinating. I had no idea about that. But I want to take you back to your experience with owls, because I'm very fascinated with screen memories and the idea that actual owls after the screen memory come up. Tell us about your experience with the owls. What owls did you see? What kind of owls were they? I mean, how did you know the difference between it being an actual owl or a screen memory?
So I've told the story many times. I'll try to tell it quick here because it's a powerful story, and it really defines a lot of my own, like that. Remember I made this little right turn thing in my description of like my life changing. This is when my life changed. I was camping. So I did a lot of outdoor work. I was working in Alaska, and I would work in the Rockies, and I did a lot of outdoor work. And I was at the time living in, just on the outskirts of Grand Teton National Park. I was living in Idaho, right on the Wyoming border. So this is right next to Yellowstone. It's a beautiful place. And I met a woman, and I didn't really know her. And I basically said, hey, let's go camping, which is kind of like a first date. And that sounds kind of funny, but given the town I was in and the sort of camping culture and stuff like that, the outdoor culture, that was kind of a normal thing. So we went camping. I didn't know her, complete stranger. And her name is Kristen. And we went into the mountains for one night, and it was going to be a beautiful, clear night. It was October, so we knew the weather. We didn't take a tent, so we just slept out under the stars was our plan. So I was sitting on a rock making dinner. I had been working all summer. It was October. It was 2006. I would have been 44 years old, and I sitting on a rock making dinner, having a conversation with her. The conversation switched to like, all of a sudden I was like, oh my word, this person is so much more insightful and so much more thoughtful than I had ever guessed. It's just, so the conversation changed, and I had to ask this later, like, what were you talking about right at that moment? And she said, I was talking about my deepest thought, my deepest definition of what God means to me. And right at that moment, an owl flew over us, and then a second owl, and then a third owl. And for the next couple of hours, as the sun went down and went to total darkness, these owls flew around us, and we laid on our backs, and these owls flew above us and passed right over our eyes. So owls are very quiet in flight. So you lay on your back and you're looking up at the magnificent stars of the Northern Rockies, and these owls would fly right over our faces, and they didn't make any noise, totally silent. And it was so magical. It was so magical. After that, we went camping 4 days later to a totally different part of the mountains. The same exact thing happened, except instead of the owls being way far away, they were like landing at our feet. They were landing on the branch right next to us. In that moment, I had been reading UFO books. I was well aware of the screen memory thing. I looked at these real owls, and I was like, that's a real owl. They were about, 11 inches tall. They flew around. They were landing in branches. They were doing owl things. They were real owls. I've had some researchers saying, no, those were screen memories. I'm like, I was there. I feel pretty strongly those were real owls. So again, 3 owls. I'm convinced they were the same 3 owls that Kristen and I saw 4 days later as the sun set. Now, so I thought about it in the moment, like, is this a screen memory? And I was very shy and cautious to say this at the time. I've spoken about it at great length now, but in that moment of seeing those owls both times, I had a voice in my head that said to me, might have been my own voice, but it said, this has something to do with UFOs. So to have this experience happen once was pretty cool. To have it happen twice with the same person 4 days later, it was so unsettling to me. And I've said this many times. I spent from about 2006 to about 2013, was that like 7 years? So the next 7 years, I probably spent 95% of my waking hours wondering if I had gone insane, because after that event, I was absolutely flooded, inundated, like smothered, drowning in synchronicities in a way that I can barely articulate now. It has calmed down greatly, but those years were off the charts as far as the mystical experiences I was having. So they did very few things involved. Like I had some UFO stuff that happened in those years, but most of the synchronicities were about UFOs or UFO researchers, or they were about owls. It was crazy. So anyway, so that was a long answer. Hopefully I answered your question.
You did. Thank you, Mike.
Wow. And I'm sure after we get back from break, we'll go into this a little bit more. But, a very similar experience back in 2012 when I started this UFO journey happened to me. Well, just in your face synchronicities. And, in writing the book, Letters of Love and Light for Dr. Leo Sprinkle, and I think, Mike, you have met or at least corresponded with Dr. Sprinkle. He talks about, this PAX. And P stands for childhood preparation or childhood visitation or abduction. And then A is the abduction, C contact and adult visitation. The T is training and that OCD, and I think that's where the synchronicities start coming in and you just get obsessed with reading and research and that. And then the last one is service, where you go out and you share with others. So do you believe you had the P, like the childhood, the preparation? Did you have connections with ET in childhood? Can you speak about that a little bit?
Well, I had a missing time event when I was 12 years old, and I was walking home from a high school football game with a friend of mine. Now, in that same, this would have been 1974. I'm 59 now, and in 1974, I had what I feel like is a close-up UFO sighting. It might have been big, far away, but it seemed like it was about the size of a van close-up, and I saw it out a window, and I saw it with a friend, and I actually drew it that night, and that childhood illustration is in one of the books, and it's on my website, and I've since redrawn it, but it was a sort of a coffee can-shaped thing. I mean, this is a wrong thing. This is just a water bottle, but it was this coffee can-shaped thing that I saw in the nighttime sky, and it was rotating in this very odd way. That makes sense. It was kind of rotating. It was descending. And instead of this, a water bottle, but instead of that, it was more coffee can shape with a pencil sticking out of the top, let's say. And I watched it for about 30 seconds with my friend, and then it disappeared. And it was gone. Poof, gone. And I used to say that the lights turned out and we couldn't see it anymore, but I read enough UFO, and I always knew I was lying because I didn't want to say that it vanished, but it vanished. And I'm saying that now. And I also had a missing time event where I was walking home from a high school football game, again as 12-year-old boy. And there was a bright orange light in the sky, and it happened. I could know exactly in the neighborhood where it was. It was Friday night. And when there was nothing to see, it just felt like the sky click, turned orange, click, turned back to regular. Like nighttime sky, calm night. No, we did the little checklist. Like, could it have been like an explosion off in the distance? Could it have been lightning? Could it have been like, the towers, or the telephone poles have those transformers? Did one of those explode? But it was totally silent. None of that made any sense. And then I got to my house and I walked in the house and my parents, they were mad at me. They were waiting up for me. They were like, "Why are you out so late?" I'm like, "It's not late. I told you I'd be home at 9:30. It's 9:30 now." And they pointed to the clock and it was 11:30. Mm-hmm. So, and there was long before I didn't see UFO. So like, I just was like, but the next Monday at school, I talked to my friend about that. We were in a group of other boys in the cafeteria in the junior high school. And I said, "Yeah, something weird happened on Friday night." And my friend just blurted out, "Yeah, we saw a UFO with lights and everything." And I was like, whoa, I never saw anything like that. I never saw any lights. I just saw the sky turn. So I was just like, I never brought it up. I talked to him since, and he does not remember that. We're Facebook friends now, 40 plus years later.
Very cool. We've only got a few minutes till break, but I have a question for you. So quick backstory. I spent a week at the Monroe Institute. You've probably heard of it or have been there, just to really get more into meditating. And something really, well, everything surprised me that week. Honestly, I went in with these ideas of, well, meditation is really just me kind of in a relaxed state, and I'm just kind of playing out, this stuff in my head. What surprised me so much about the meditations was how much showed up that I'm like, I would never think of that. I would never believe that. Stuff, it was like watching a movie and it was all someone else's thoughts. So that part of it blew me away. But there was one level, because they have like these different focus levels. And this one level I would go to every single time my guide was there with a giant blue owl. And this owl was almost my height. So, I'm like 5'3", so I'm thinking this thing's at least 4.5 or maybe around 4 feet tall. I don't know, but I'm, it's just a little shorter than me, but it was blue. And I remember coming out of that first meditation thinking, why in the world would I make an owl blue? And why would I make it giant? It seemed so goofy. I didn't want to tell anybody. But the reason I started telling a few people was because the information that would come from this owl was crazy wild. Like this one focus level where I'd meet the owl was called the no time level. There's like no time. And I remember saying to this owl, well, I know time is just made up. There's no real time on Earth either. And the owl just immediately, well, first of all, it didn't move. It just like telepathically talked to me. But it said, oh no, time is real on Earth. And I was like, excuse me, this is my meditation, so you're not allowed to argue with me. But it said Earth has to exist. Time has to exist on Earth or humans won't do what they're supposed to do. They won't get their jobs done. So he's like, you can always come hang out here with us where there is no time, but you need to be clear that on Earth there is time. Now, I've just told a very long story and we've got less than a minute till break. But have you ever heard of anybody else seeing blue owls?
Yes. There's a wonderful illustration in, it's black and white in the book, but in the second book, I think it's in chapter 13. I think, and then it's a story about a bridge. I can't remember the exact name of the title. I could grab the book here in a second. But a fellow who had a powerful, like for me, it was like one of the most powerful experiences, him telling me his story to me. I can tell you after the break, it's wild. And he told me a story, and in his youth, he drew a picture of like these blue owls hanging out in his bedroom. It looks eerily like a nighttime visitation with gray aliens, but he was drawing blue owls in his bedroom. So yes, his name is,
and they were blue.
He goes by Mike C, and which is also my, it's not me, but I'm pretty good friends with him. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm not the only one. All right. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to hear more about that story after the break. All right. We're going to be right back in just a couple minutes.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Welcome back to Move On What's Up. I'm doing my owl head dance. What was going on there. So if you're just joining us, our guest tonight is Mike Clelland. And right before break, we were talking about how in a few of my meditations, I would see this giant blue owl. And I thought the fact that it was colored blue was pretty bizarre. But Mike was saying, no, you're not the only one that has seen this. So Mike, can you pick back up with that story?
Well, the fellow who saw it just was a boyhood set of experiences, and he did a bunch of illustrations. It's funny, I think this is true of a lot of people. He's like documenting his own stuff, and he's got like a couple 3-ring binders of just drawings and notes and things like that, just all of his own experiences. And he's a male nurse, so this is that healing thing that shows up. So the second book that I worked on, I'm looking over my shoulder. I got it on the bookshelf back there. Which is something I didn't expect. Like, I collected all these stories which didn't fit in the first book. Like, I had so many stories that were good. I got a lot of stories, but the second book had these more complex stories. And in that book is where I really noticed the theme of healing. Like, he's a healer, a very pragmatic healer. He's working as a male nurse. And so he's driving home from work one day. And to get home he's got to drive through the suburbs and the town and stuff like that. And he crosses a bridge. And just as he crosses the bridge, a great big owl flies whoosh, right up to the windshield. Full daylight, it's like afternoon, flies right up to the windshield and scared. He basically said it scared the crap out of me. So he's got to make a left turn, and this owl just swoops at it. But he's right after he came off this bridge, so he turns a corner, and I have an image of this again in the website, in the book and stuff. But I generated an image making through Photoshop and stuff like that. So it's not a true photograph, but it's from the location. So he makes a left turn, and he gets about a half a mile down the highway, and he looks to his left, and there's a flying saucer, like a giant football field sized flying saucer hovering above this kind of ugly industrial park. And it's rising up into the air. And he's in traffic. He doesn't understand why no one else is stopping. And he's in traffic, and he moves along, and he kind of loses sight of it as this thing is floating up, and he's stuck in traffic moving along. So, owl and UFO. Heard these kind of things 1,000 times. And then he says, oh yeah, by the way, I was, as I was driving, I had an interview that you had done, you meaning me, that I had done. And it was a talk you gave about owls and UFOs. And I was listening to that when I saw the owl and the UFO. And I was like, wait a minute, what? What? You saw an owl and a UFO while listening to me talking about owls and UFOs? He's like, yeah. Now, synchronicities are that's almost doesn't count for this. That feels like so monument. That feels like it was orchestrated somehow. The power that had for me was just, and I've had a lot of things like that, but never felt like a grand slam, like a home run. But I've had a lot of things where people say, oh, I was reading your book and I looked and saw an owl. And I've had other people say, yeah, I was looking, like one person said, I was reading your book and I finished it. I closed the book and I said, I want to see an owl. And he went outside and he saw a UFO. So like these things they're intertwined in the mystery. And what it tells me is that I have some involvement, and I'm very cautious to say this because I know how it sounds, but I have some involvement in this. So there was your answer. So that's the fellow who had the Grand Slam owl UFO and my voice talking about owls and UFOs within minutes of each other, all overlapping, basically the same experience. And he's also a healer, and he's the one who has done illustrations of the big blue owl standing at the base of his bed as a boy.
Wow. Very cool. Thank you.
That's incredible. Mike, I got a question for you. I want to throw this that's out of the box question. All right. So we know that some of these screen memories, these owls that are seen, are screen memories. Because obviously, in your book, I read where one owl was wearing boots, and I have never seen an owl wearing boots before. So I mean that let's just say that's probably an alien screen memory. But after people have seen a UFO incident and an owl, real owls come up. Can the aliens be using owls as a surveillance instrument? Do they say, okay, we put the screen memory in the person, we're not going to be visiting them all the time, but we can collect data on this person by sending a real owl, see what the real owl picks up from this person. I've never heard that before, but after reading your book, I came up with that theory and thinking maybe they are using owls as a surveillance system on their abductees or the people with missing time. Because you have, after your screen memory that you had, you saw real owls, correct?
Well, I don't know if it was a screen memory. I don't have a screen memory. Like, it feels like I saw real owls. I feel very confident I saw real owls, so.
Okay.
And that didn't have anything to do with UFO sighting. That was an experience with where I had synchronicities in the aftermath.
But do you think with some of these sightings that have been seen, that they're using owls, real owls?
Yeah, and I speculate on that.
Surveillance thing.
I speculate at that in the book, and I see no way to prove it, obviously, right? So, but if they were to choose an animal as a surveillance tool, like an organic drone, let's say, then nothing would be better than an owl, because one, it has night vision, so it can see in the dark, right? So it can and then two, if you see an owl out the window, wow, it's unusual. You take note of it, but it, you're not gonna.
You're not hostile to owls. You're not hostile to them. You're not hostile to them.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're actually. Yeah. So if you saw an owl out a window, and that's very common for people to say, like, oh, I see owls up my window. Like, there's owls sitting on my windowsill. I get that a lot in connection with these stories. And then also, owls have, as remarkable as their night vision is, it's their hearing that is by far the most attuned. So they have the ability to see in almost near complete darkness and fly. So when they hunt for mice, they are in flight. They are listening. Their feathers are specialized, so they make very little noise. So they are not their own feathers in flight are not interrupting their ability to hear. They are listening for mice on the ground at night while flying in near total darkness. They are listening for mice on the ground, or even under snow. So if you were to have an organic drone, the owl would be the perfect choice, because it could, if you were having a conversation in your house, it could be well away from you and hear everything perfectly. If you were walking around at night or doing something at night, it could absolutely see everything you're doing. So if a alien consciousness, whether through technology, did they abduct the owl and put a little implant in it, or do they just use psychic means and sort of tap into the consciousness of the owl and see through its eyes and then hear through its ears? Wow, that's a wonderful thing to speculate on, but tough to prove. So, but I do go down that road and contemplate that or speculate.
You do, and it really brings up a great idea that could be done.
Yeah, military owl drones. Yeah, There's an owl. There was a program which they called where they were trying to make drones being very quiet, and they called it the Great Owl Drone or something like the Great Horned Owl Program or something like that, and which makes perfect sense because they fly, and they fly in almost total silence. Wow. Well, there you go. I have two thoughts. One thought back to Katie and the blue owls. There's a big debate, not a big debate, but there's sort of two different sides of this blue orb phenomenon that's being researched lately with contactees. Some feel that the blue orbs have healing power. So that kind of speaks to what you guys were talking about in your witness that had the blue owl, and he was a healer of some sort. And then there's the other side that says the blue orbs, like in skinwalkers at the Pentagon, can cause people to become ill. So that's just a thought I had. And second, I'm surprised that Chris, that you haven't had any owl things, because I know, Mike, you talk about your books with the synchronicities with people named Chris. Can you talk about that?
Well, you know what? That's funny, because that came up when I was doing the initial book, and I have a little less like I take note of it when I saw your name, Chris. I was, but it doesn't mean anything, right? A lot of people named Chris. So the first story I told was a story in the mountains with a woman named Kristen, which is Chris right in it. And so what was one of the people? Do you know Christopher Bledsoe? Anyone familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's had more owls experiences than, oh my God, he's had the craziest, most powerful owl experiences around his home. So, do you know the researcher Christopher Knowles?
Heard of it.
Yeah, so he does a lot of esoteric research, a lot of stuff on symbolism and synchronicity and stuff like that. But he's had his own UFO sightings. But he's Christopher with Knowles. It is OWL. He has owl right in his name. So when I was originally doing the research, like it was off the charts. Like it felt like I was just constantly hearing owl and UFO stories from people named Chris, whether they were Kristen, Christina, Christian, Christopher, or Crystal. So I was getting a lot of people with the name Chris embedded in their name. Now, like that name. So this is like when I told the first story with Kristen, we saw the first owls, and she was giving me her most heartfelt definition of what God meant to her. Now, I am not at all churchy, but I recognize the power in what she was saying. So Christopher has Christ right in the name. So those 5 letters are like, there is no more powerful mythic name in Western culture than Christ. I mean, it has defined the West for the last 2,000 years. So I use the term highly charged human events in my research. So I'm saying that, like, embedded within this mysterious stuff that I'm struggling with are people, a disproportionate number of people, men and women, with the name Christ embedded into their name. So there is a highly charged name embedded into these highly charged stories, making the whole thing just that much more highly charged. And the fellow, I'm just going to, as an aside, like if 2 people are talking about flying saucers or UFOs, like any 2 thoughtful people should be talking for about 3 minutes before they start asking the big questions. You know, who are we? Why are we here? What does it mean? When in the opening of the show, I was really impressed. The fellow from NASA standing there at the podium and the NASA logo behind him, he did exactly what he should have done, which is, in my opinion, the correct thing to do. Like, you're confronted with, like, some Navy pilot sees a tic-tac shaped thing and sees it on radar and it disappears and it makes all these crazy maneuvers. This guy from NASA basically said, you know, like, why are we here? What does it all mean? Like, that's what comes with this. And I would also say that that's almost the totem of the owl in a way. Like, the owl has a mystique, an eerie mystique. So, like, that's what I'm seeing in these stories. Like, it is forcing people to confront these really big questions. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, but I did the thing where I kind of go around the block before I get back to your question. So
you did.
That was really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and apologize because I'm going to tell quite a few of my own stories tonight. And I feel, Mike, almost like you have this almost therapist kind of vibe to you. And I know that's why so many people come to you because they're trying to make sense of their own thing. So I'm getting a free session tonight by just telling you some of my stories.
I'm not a professional therapist. I have to say that I am in no way a professional therapist. So.
Well, I have just a lot of weird things. Well, we all do. I mean, that's why we're all on this, podcast together. We have weird stories that we can't make sense of. I'm just going to tell you this quick story and just see if it rings any bells. If anybody else has said anything like this. I've had a few times, this is a little weird, a little out there, but I've had a few times where I have thought for a brief moment I was literally feeling what another animal was feeling. Like I could literally kind of see through their eyes. It's very brief. It comes a lot in meditations and stuff. But one of the craziest owl experiences I've ever had was not that long ago. It's in the house I'm in now. I woke up in the middle of the night. This has never happened to me before. I woke up just screaming in pain. There was like a piercing feeling through my lip right here. And I just woke up and I grabbed my face and I screamed. My husband's like, what the hell? I'm like, something bit me or pierced me. It's piercing is the word I want to use. And I felt my face. There was no blood. It made no sense. And right in that moment, an owl started hooting right outside our window. And I was like, have you ever heard an owl here before? He's like, no. And this is before I had read your books. He's like, no, it's not uncommon that there would be any kind of bird around here. We've got quite a lot of trees and stuff. But it was bizarre. But what went through my mind was, is an owl about to attack a small animal? And I somehow, in my weird dreamy state, was actually connecting with the rodent or whatever that was about to get taken out. It was just weird. I'm just throwing that into the collection of stories today. Have you ever heard anything like that?
So the answer is yes, absolutely. Yes.
That's why I'm telling it, I guess.
So when I say I'm not a professional, people contact me, and they'll tell me a story, and I can't do much except say you're not alone. And so what I also do a lot lately is people say, oh, this weird thing happened to me. Like, oh, and I'm from Michigan, so I'm the worst at it. So I'm like, oh, don't you put too much credence to anything I say. Like, I'm not special. That's like nothing interesting, So, but I'm saying to you, you said, oh, this is a weird story. And given all my stuff, like, it's no longer weird to me. It's like, no, this is part of the human experience. This is embedded into us in humans as human beings. Like, we have this rich lineage and this rich ability to, so like there's this ancient folklore, like, and it's in these dusty books on a shelf in some library or some, academic bookshelf, right? And they have these stories just like what you're talking about. And then you have the real experience and you say, oh, isn't this interesting? I'm going to, like, some scholar did this research on this old book, but then you have the real experience and you're like, oh no, not me. Like, I'm giving up. Like, no, this is normal. The stuff in the books is still happening. It's happening to you. In the second book, the very first chapter in the second book is about Bert Jansen, who is a crop circle researcher and does a lot of esoteric research, more specifically on like sacred geometry now. But he started out as a crop circle researcher. He's from Holland, and he would do research in England. And his wife Heather is a shaman, and they had this story. Oh my gosh, to tell the story takes an hour. And it's just like everything's open-ended. It's like 1,000 synchronicities stacked on each other. And it has to do with owls and crop circles. But so they were chasing an owl at night, like in crop circle country. And the owl eventually led him to the spot, and the owl flew off. And the next day there was a crop circle near that site. So, but when they were driving, and I know Bert pretty well, and I could see him driving like really fast down these lonely roads in England, and so he's chasing this owl, and the owl's in his headlights, and the owl makes a turn, and he turns and he follows the owl, and then the owl is on a fence post, and they get out of the car and they approach the owl, and the owl flies off, and then Heather just all of a sudden like has this like visionary experience with like this, like she's flying above the fields, and she's seeing it in like night vision, and she's flying above the fields, and so she's flying straight, but the fields undulate. And so what she said is it felt like the earth was coming up to her and backing off, and coming up to her and backing off. So she said she had a visionary experience of seeing through the eyes of the owl, which goes right back to the surveillance camera we talked about earlier. Well, like there's no technology connecting her. Like this was a psychic connection. So she didn't have a special implant in her brain, and the owl didn't have a special implant in its eyes. Something more mystical was taking place. But that's in the realm of the shaman, right? Like you like take ayahuasca with this, like you're going to be the next shaman in the village, and you meditate and you take some psychedelic, and then you like live as the puma, and you run through the jungle as the puma. Like we can all kind of envision that. So that to me is almost like the experience of a shaman. And Heather declares that, she says straight up, I am a shaman. I'm a working shaman. And she went through a long apprenticeship and stuff and such. So I trust her on that, in that story. So my question for you was like, how would you place yourself in that budding shamanic role? You said you went to the Monroe Institute. That doesn't happen by accident. Like you went there for some reason.
Yes, and I won't tell the stories here, but in the last year, I've had multiple experiences where I could swear for a brief second I was feeling like, but they're small animals. I like, why can't I have be a tiger, or something?
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, no, I have very briefly connected with very small, vulnerable animals, and I'll tell it on another episode sometime. But I literally brought one back to life in my hand, a chipmunk that was dying, and for somehow our hearts connected. But I'll be honest with you, I have not spent any time in studying about shamanism and. Maybe I'm supposed to. Maybe that's part of why we're having this conversation. I claim no skill in that area, but this is helping me a lot. That I know this conversation's happening for a reason. So thank you.
Well, you brought a chipmunk back to life, so you're kind of like you gotta give yourself a little credit there. Whatever. With the shaman's a funny vocabulary word, but yeah.
I will tell you, my cat brought it back in 3 more times, and it did eventually die, but it was the same one, which is very strange. I only know because of the way its tail was shredded. It's like it wouldn't leave being close to me. I'll tell it another time. I'm going to cry now.
Yeah. That's such a good question and such a good point, because it seems like in this journey, and I know this kind of goes in the realm, a little outside nuts and bolts MUFON, it goes more into the mystical realm of ufology and the subject of UFOs. But it seems like when I was really plugged in 2012, 2013, 2014, going through that with my brother and really heavy into investigations, my house was filled with owls. And when I would meditate, I don't know. There we go. I would always see a snowy owl. So I want to kind of ask about the snowy owls eventually. But I would also, Katie, I'm bringing this up because I'm relating to your story. Like I said, I've lived here a long time. And during just those years, we'd hear an owl hooting outside our window. Now, since it's been years, I don't hear that owl anymore. So I think there is something connected to that. That's when I was going to psychic development group and all that. And that's when the owls, hawks, and eagles all kind of came in the number synchronicity. So I find it all fascinating, I don't know, and the shaman piece too. So I think that's kind of a sign to you, Katie, maybe look into the shamanism.
I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Well, you're already looking into it. If you went to the Monroe Institute, you're already there in a way.
Right.
So.
I guess so. Yeah.
Shamans, you don't have to be locked into the word shaman, but you're doing some sort of personal inner work. Yeah.
Well, I'm amazed by all these stories. This is absolutely amazing. But I got to tell you, I got to be a big disappointment to you, Mike, because one, I saw by the name of Chris. I could tell you when I reach the pearly gates, they're going to say, "Really? You think you're coming in here? Go down to the next level." Okay, so that's number one. And number two, I've never seen an owl. I mean, I'm a city boy, so I didn't see my first cow until I was 16. So I mean, as far as seeing owls, I haven't seen it. But I will tell you this though, I am fascinated by what you're saying, because I do a lot of work with screen memory stuff, and one of the most important cases you looked at was where this woman was walking a path, and as she was walking, she actually sees an alien. And as she sees this alien, the alien discovers he's been discovered himself. And he tries to put a screen memory into her. Now, what's important about that is because this is one of the very rare cases where a person actually sees it and the alien transforms into an owl. So I want to know, what was your feeling? What was that moment in time? Was her whole body reacting to trying the screen memory? Was it actually working? There is about a gazillion questions. But Mike, explain that situation for us, will you?
Okay, so the person you're talking about has a pen named Lucretia Hart, and she has an amazing website called At Spiral's End. And synchronicity, I went through some life changes, and I was basically out of the place where I was living, and I needed to find a new place to live. So she the day I realized, oh no, I have to move. I have to start this chapter of my life over again. And I got a phone call from her. I hadn't talked to her for 6 years. And she says, and I'm, this is the woman who had that experience of seeing the owl on the side of the road, on the side of the path. And she called me up and, we have a room for rent in the big house we live in. And that's where I am right now. So she's downstairs right now. So that's where her website is at Spiral's End. I would recommend it to anyone. It is a bottomless pit of some of the most powerful UFO accounts I've ever read, or I mean, I can just talk to her about it too. But so when she did a beautiful job of explaining, and I tried to put it where like when you're in contact with this alien intelligence, which has its ability to read your mind, and in a way you're telepathically connected. So there's this almost like reverberation. She basically said it was like an echo, where she looked at this gray alien standing on the side of the path, and I think she was like 19 or something years old. She was working at a summer camp for girls, and she heard in her mind like owl, 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 and this thing morphed into an owl. I have another story in the book where someone sees a series of gray aliens morph into 3 deer, and that's very rare, but it does show up where people will see a being. I spoke to one woman who saw an alien in her bedroom. I think it was in her kitchen. She turned a corner, walked in the kitchen. There was a gray alien there. And it just turned into a cat, this giant cat. So there are accounts of these screen memories where they actually morph right into, and that people remember these in full consciousness. So now I can't remember your original question. What was it?
I tell you, I'm so memorized, I even forgot it. But I will tell you this, that I want to know if there was any type of difference in their mind afterwards, or was there any kind of imbalance? That moment that alien turned into a screen memory of a cat, a deer, an owl, what was their first thoughts? I mean, that's the important part, because there's an interaction between the alien and the human, and that's so fascinating to find out what actually that mind melt. I guess that's the best way to put it.
That's where I was trying to describe that eerie echo, where like not only are you having your own thoughts, you're sharing the thoughts with this being. And I can't speak to the account where the deer changed, or the cat, or that changed into the cat story or the deer story, but I can speak to hers because I've talked with her at length about it. She sort of struggles with this, like this instant connection that's where you're sharing consciousness almost. So communication is instantaneous. It's not like the words come out of your mouth and fly through the air and enter the ear of the other person, and they think about it, and then they get right back to you with another statement. That's how we're having our conversation right now. It's not like that, according to the witnesses I've spoken to. It is like an instantaneous, absolute knowing. Mm-hmm. And to have that happen, to see a gray alien and then watch it morph into an owl. And she said she saw the owl run away. The owl turned its around and walked into the woods. And then she went back there later. And so she knows where she saw the being, and she knows where it walked into the woods, and she followed it. And there was a big trench there, like a little waterway. So if this thing had walked, it would have walked away from her, walked down, and then walked back up. But that's not what happened. It just like almost hovered, like a little hovercraft into the forest, which is a weird, eerie detail. And if someone was making this up, I don't think they would make up that detail.
No, that's very important.
Mm-hmm. Well, staying on the whole kind of possible screen memory train here, I think you had a case in one of your books. I can't remember if they were in the car, but it was 2 people. But one was like, "Oh my God, there's an alien," and the other one's like, "What are you talking about? It's an owl." And so I'm wondering, in that moment, is that like if the alien was doing it to the person, putting the screen memory there, is that just alien mind control fail? Like some people maybe some people are more easily affected by that kind of technology, and some people are a little immune to it. I don't know.
So that's a story from Karina Sables, who wrote a book called, I can't remember the name of her book. So she's a Canadian experience. Her name is Karina Sables, and the book is quite good. But she talks about driving. She's coming around a corner, and they had been at a Skywatch thing. They went to watch the night sky at a lake, and then everyone, like a party of, I think it's her boyfriend at the time, and I think her daughter or two daughters were with her, and they were young. And then they all were like looking at the night sky, and they all said, "Oh, I don't feel very good." And they all went to sleep. And then they all woke back up and said, "Well, let's go home." So they got in their car. I think I've got this right. There, I have another story that's almost exactly the same thing, almost exactly. But they're driving, come around a corner, and three of the people in the car scream like, "Ah!" And then the driver's like, "What are you screaming at? Like, that was just an owl on the side of the road." And then the three people, it was the driver, the boyfriend, and then the mother and the two daughters, I think I've got this right, scream, and they say like, "That was a gray alien." And so to answer like the reason why one sees it and one doesn't, I have no idea. But that's another one of these stories where, like, I mean, there's a richness to that story because they all took a nap at the same time, instantaneously. So there's these powerful details that make up the strangeness of these stories, which I think is inherent in these stories. Whitley Strieber's wife said, quite wisely, she said, "I know when people are telling me a real UFO story, like a real experience. I know when they're telling me about a real experience." Because or she basically says, "I know when they're lying or when they're making it up, because if it's not real, if it's not weird, I don't trust it." So that's her kind of BS detector. Like, if someone tells you a story and it's not totally weird, then you have to sort of like, I've come to trust that. Like, I kind of think like, well, wait a minute. But so the weirder the story, the more I trust it.
Yeah, and
maybe
that's a great No, that's a great reminder. Anne Strieber was she had such a cool take on all of this because she got to see all these letters coming to Whitley and kind of sit back a little bit and absorb it all. And yeah, man, she really read some pretty weird stuff. And thank you for reminding me about that weird factor, because I still have a tendency to go, I want to tell this thing that happened to me, but it's so weird. And I need to get over that, because the quicker we all just start saying, here's what happened to me last night, and just put it out there, we build up that data, and I almost feel like I'm perpetuating the tinfoil hat thing every time I go, "This is a really weird story." So,
it has to be weird in order to like.
Well, they're weird. They're all really
weird. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to ask you a question, Mike, about Whitley Strieber's thing. Have you investigated his communion, his actual abduction, and his thing? I think there's an owl involved with that, right?
Oh yeah. So that was that was it's funny. The very first point in what I would call popular culture that the owl got equated to the UFO contact experience was in his book, his 1987 book, Communion. And I reference it all the time. It's on page 26 in the book, or 27. And he had an experience that would have been on Christmas night. I think it was, or the night after Christmas. It was either December 26th or December 27th of 1985. He spent 86 writing the book, and the book came out in 87. And he had this powerful experience at night with like what we would now call UFO abduction. And in the morning, he told his wife, Anne, he said, "I think there was an owl looking in our window last night. There was a barn owl looking in our window last night." And barn owls are the spooky ones with the black eyes. And they're the ones that have the most eerie similarity to the gray alien. So, and he went to the windowsill. It was wintertime. It was upstate New York. And there was a little bit of snow on the windowsill, and the snow had been there for a couple days. It hadn't snowed. And then there was the roof line below it, and there was no footprints in the snow. And he said the lack of footprints in the snow made his heart sink. Because he basically had evidence that what he saw in the window was not a real owl. There was something else. This, what I would call a visionary experience of an owl in out the window.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to him about this, and he's talked about it. We've had the conversation about that very event. And I'm very shy to tell someone else's story, although I do all the time. But but that, so that is the very first point in popular culture where owls and UFOs are connected. I'm going to amend that slightly, because since then there was a book that came out in 1968, which Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. I'm assuming some people have read that. It was a super popular book at the time. That has UFO abduction in it, that book, before like UFO abduction was even a thing. And in the story, before Billy Pilgrim, the fictional character in the book, gets abducted, he hears an owl hooting. So he basically says a purple flying saucer hovers over his backyard, and in the distance he hears an owl hooting. It's right there, side by side, in fiction. And so, like, to me as this researcher, I'm like not at all concerned with the like, I'm looking for the flavor of these things. I'm an artist, I'm an illustrator. I'm not a pragmatic researcher. I'm like totally into the mood and the flavor and the tenor of these things. So the fact that a popular fiction book, like a really popular fiction book, had that side by side absolute connection of an owl and UFO contact, I treat that just as with the same. I treat that. I weight that equally to Whitley Strieber's story from 20 years later in 1987.
And did you say it was a barn owl that Whitley saw?
A barn owl, yeah.
Barn owl. I think we have a picture of those. So absolutely, that kind of, yeah, that is. Yeah, even I get the willies a little bit. I mean, they're beautiful, but there's something about that face. It is very alien-like for sure.
Right. I have a quick question, Mike. In all your research, is there a difference between, if you see a barn owl or a snowy owl, or do different owls tend to have different meanings? Because I've always been connected to this snowy owl, that one right there. Mm-hmm. That's what comes to me in meditations. And so have you noticed a difference between species?
So in the lore, I would say the North American lore, and this is very tough because there's different tribes and different spiritual beliefs but the white owl in North American folklore would be more of a spiritual message. So I titled the book The Messengers. People would send me these stories and they would type out, I would get a lot of them in emails. There it is on the screen there. So I would get these stories, and people would say like, oh, the owl landed on a fence post. And then, like I heard the voice of my grandmother or something like that. I get these kind of stories. And then they would just organically say, the messenger was on the fence post. And they would, for the remainder of their 2 or 3 page little essay that they share with me, their own personal experience, they would stop calling it an owl and call it a messenger. That just happened enough times that it was like, it became the title of the book. So as far as the difference, and then the brown owls, like a great horned owl, would be more of a pragmatic thing. Yeah, there we go. More of a pragmatic thing. Okay, you need to deal something pragmatically in your life. You need to deal with something. The message is being delivered is more on a pragmatic human level, where the white owls would be more of a mystical, spiritual level. That's not universal. And to be fair, like I don't like, if someone has a mystical experience, like where like they see an owl, somebody walks by, they're like, oh my God, I had this powerful thing, and someone has an owl t-shirt on. I weight it with the same authority as if they had seen a real owl. And so there's an amazing, beautiful story in this woman, Shauna Holm, who straight up says she is a shaman. Shauna Holm is her name. And she took, in the book, I write about it, and she took mushrooms as a ritual, and did alone. And she has an incredibly powerful story about being in her room, and the room transforms in this psychedelic experience to like being covered in white owl feathers, and then this giant, like she describes it as being like 10 feet tall, giant white owl comes to her, talks telepathically to her. And so she was at a point in her spiritual development in her life where she like was at this transition stage. So she takes this psychedelic mushrooms. She has a powerful visionary experience of a giant owl. She is given the telepathic message from the owl. The story is long and involved, but this is the core of it. And the owl says, "You are no longer child who yearns. You are now woman who knows." I think I'm doing that right. So that, so she was at that transition point in her life where she was no longer an apprentice, and she basically came out of that experience with the owl as the messenger, knowing that she was meant to take on the role of healing people, no longer being the shamanic apprentice. She had to take on the powerful role of being the shaman to help people, and that came through the visionary experience of a communion with this giant white snowy owl.
Wow.
Oh, here, I'll tell one more snowy owl story. In Boston, in I think the late 80s, John Mack was doing research. He just started the research that he was doing. And I think this woman, it's a woman, she's wrote a great book. Her name is Elizabeth Anglin. I can't remember the book off the top of my head, but it's a multi-part book, and she didn't even get to this part in the first book, but in the later in her life, she was the either the first or second person who worked with John Mack directly and shared with John Mack, the Harvard professor, her experiences. So John Mack had a support group at his home. So everyone came to the house, and a bunch of people sat in a circle and talked about their experience. One of the very early UFO support group experiences ever, probably, and at John Mack's home. And then when they left and drove away, they were driving out, pulled out of John Mack's home, and someone in the car said, "What'd y'all think of that?" They were carpooling together. What'd you think? And at that moment, a white snowy owl, which are big, they are big owls, huge wide wingspan, seemingly as wide as the roof of the car, flew out in front of them, lit up in the headlight, and led them down the street. Okay, first UFO experiencer group, John Mack. First person to be one of John Mack's patients in this research. They asked the question, "What'd you think? How was that for you?" And then they're led down the path, let's say, by a giant white snowy owl. Giant in the sense that they seem very large when their wings are outstretched. So, I mean, is that a synchronicity? Does that it's beyond synchronicity? That feels like a fiction. That feels like if a novelist wrote that in the book, that would be perfect, right?
Right.
You'd read it in a story, it'd just be but it happened in real life. So these visionary, I use that term visionary all the time, these seemingly staged events are taking place in real life, and they have the flavor of fiction, or they have the flavor of a dream. I'll also say that. Yeah.
Speaking of dreams and John Mack and everything, have you ever taken these people, or do you know if they've gone under hypnoregression in order to find out, what that owl was or what has happened? I mean, tell us about the hypnoregression stuff that you've worked on.
Well, I can tell you about my own. How's that?
Yeah, I want to hear it. Let's go.
Okay. So I worked with Yvonne Smith, and I was in California, and this is oh God, to tell you, any of these stories, you can't say here's the beginning of the story, here's the middle of the story, here's the end of the story, because you get well, wait a minute, but then this other thing happened over here, and this thing happened like this. And so I was traveling to California. And I said, well, I'm in there. I should talk to Yvonne Smith, who I've met a few times at conferences. And so I emailed her and said, I'm going to be in California on these certain days. This would have been in 2018. And she said, what a nice coincidence. I just started reading your book today, and you contacted me. So there's that perfect coincidence. Owls, UFOs, doesn't get any cleaner than that. So I go to her office. It was a couple months later. By the time I actually arrived in California, we had an appointment made, and I was going to talk about some of my experiences. I can talk about those if you want, but wow, that story goes on and on and on. But before I went under, I said to her, listen, like 2018, the book had been out for, 3 or 4 years at that point. So the owl book. And so I was already like the owl guy. I was immersed in owls, everything, owls. So I said, like, when I'm in this vulnerable place of being hypnotically regressed, like, you ask me, like, what's up with those owls? Because I want to know. I want to find it from that vault, like that who knows, like, hypnosis is a mysterious thing. So she goes, sure, I'll tell you. So we go through this thing, and this, like, all this stuff happens in the hypnosis session. I'm crying and it's super emotional, and I'm like swearing and yelling. It's pretty rough to listen to the session. But at the end, it's kind of winding down and it's all calm. And she goes, and Mike, what is your connection to owls? And without skipping a beat, I go, the owls aren't important. And I'm like, I never would say that. Like, my life, like job, like 8 hours a day is owls. Like, I never would say that. And so I say the owls aren't important. Now I can do this totally, like, it's not long. It's like a few sentences. It just flows right out of me. But when you listen to hypnosis, it's like this herky jerky thing, and you're quiet. But I spoke clearly. I spoke forcefully. I said the owls aren't important. The owls are a symbol on a door. The owl is the correct symbol for the door, but the owl is not important. It is the door that is important. We are on this side of the door in this tight, claustrophobic little hallway. And on the other side of the door is an infinite vastness. And I have no idea where that came from. So that, when I said that, it allowed me to, like, really step back and look at this mystery and not be locked into owls, but be more open to what I would call the deeper reality that seems to want to emerge when you wrestle with these stories, these owl stories.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep.
Right now I'm wrestling with a cat, in case you
kitty.
can't tell. Jupiter, she loves to be part of the party. I was trying to keep her out, but she's just kind of relentless. She just really wants to be part of this. You talk a lot in your book about the difference between abductee, contactee, experiencer. You even have something you call the maybe people. Could you just kind of differentiate all of that for us a little bit?
Well, it's funny because I kind of use all those terms interchangeably at this point. And it's funny because that's a hot button issue. I've seen people, like, actually get in, I don't want to say fist fights, that's the wrong thing, but at, like, UFO support groups, I've seen people really, like, I am not an experiencer, I'm an abductee. So there's, like, kind of a hierarchy. So it would be an abductee is someone who would feel that they're taken against their will. They're abducted. Like, there's a crime against that. That's breaking the law. You're abducted. Then an experiencer on the other end usually has a much more benevolent story to tell. Contactee would be a much more benevolent story to tell. Like, those are the people who say, like, oh, my space angel from the Pleiades gave me this message, and now I'm here to usher in, like, the new age, or help usher in the new age. That's out there in the lore. But somewhere in the middle is experiencer, and that's a term, it had been used before, but John Mack used that in his book Abduction. I don't think he chose the title for that book. I think the publisher chose the title for that book. But so he coined the term experiencer, or put it into more wide use in his book, which came out, I think, in the early 90s. So I kind of use those interchangeably, and I realized that, and I made a real effort. Like, a lot of the owl stories are in sort of the mystical, magical, love and light realm. Like, but not all the, not all the people's experiences are love and light. There's some dark, scary stuff that people have experienced. And I recognize that I kind of weight my stories, and I kind of, like, I don't want to say this, like, I embellish my storytelling a little bit with this magical, mystical thing. And I want it to be magical and mystical, but I am forced to be grounded because I know that people are having dark, troubling, difficult experiences. So I don't want to spin off wildly into the netherworld. I got to stay grounded and know that that's a complex set of experiences. And I don't want to, dwell on one and ignore the other. I gotta share both of them and make sure that both stories are told. Now, the maybe people, wow. When I was doing these stories, I found that there's like if someone says, oh, I have a total conscious memory of being on board a craft and I interacted with these beings telepathically, and then they dropped me back off in the yard again, and then the flying saucer flew off. Like, wow, like you can kind of, like, that person has a contact experience that involves a UFO. But there's other people that have these they're a rung or two down on the ladder of that sort of confirmation. And they'll say, I was this one fellow, Derek, who was one of the very first owl and UFO stories I received through email like a decade ago. He has a story of camping, sees an owl, him and his friend, like, wow, look at that owl, isn't that strange? And then the owl flies off, and then he sees a flying saucer, a triangle-shaped craft goes right above where he was camping. And I sat with him, and he struggled to define how the eerie motions of this thing as it hugged the landscape. Like, he says, this was not a conventional aircraft, and it made absolutely no noise. And he goes on to say, oh, I had another UFO sighting, and I had these mystical experiences, and I felt like I was lifted out of my bed and taken through the wall, but that was a dream. And then, I had a spiritual awakening that got kind of kicked off with all these other, with the owl sighting. And so I can't call him an abductee because I have no evidence of that. I can't call him a contactee. But he has the stories that have the flavor of the people who have the contact experience. So I started using the term the maybe people because I simply couldn't make that claim for someone else.
Right.
So that's where the maybe people came from.
Yeah. I guess I would put myself in that maybe people category. And I know you go on to talk and say the owl experience seemed to be, they have a lot of the owl experiences as well, the maybe people. We almost need a part 2 to this show because we didn't even touch base on, owls and death or owls and the Illuminati. And there's just so much folklore and myth. And I don't know, maybe you can come back in a few months because we're getting short on time. But I did want you to, I wanted to really quickly show your art. You guys have to go to Mike's website and check out his art. This guy is an amazing artist. I know you did a few sketches for some books. Also, I wanted to bring up all 3 titles of your book. So Amanda can just throw, like, this one is really interesting. I wish we had more time to talk about it. But I see, if you can go back, Amanda, to that last one there, we have the reptilian and the gray and the mantis. What are the 2 in the middle there? Can you...
Oh, there's like the sort of the blonde Nordic, that's tall.
Okay, the Nordic.
Angelic. I mean, it's a little corny. I put him in the white robe and with a prayer pose and stuff like that.
I like it.
The funny little hairy person, which shows up in the fellow. There was a documentary called Love and Saucers. David Huggins talks about these little hairy creatures. I've never heard of him anywhere, but he does paintings of his experiences, and this little funny hairy person shows up, and I just put it in there because I thought I'm a big fan of, and then I put the military guy in the background because people tell these,
super appropriate
my lab type things and stuff like
that.
Yeah. So
I know Katie and I were saying baby squatch.
Yeah, little baby squatch.
Baby squatch. Yeah. No, these illustrations are amazing. And then the third one there, I thought of Katie Cook and her cruise. I'm like, did you see that, Katie, on your cruise?
I wish.
No. But if we can just bring up Mike's books really quickly, and Mike, you could tell us about each one. This is the one we were listening to on Audible. I think, Katie, you're listening to this one too. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of hours of listening, but well worth it. I recommend it.
That's absolutely a big fat book. Yeah. So when I have 3 books, you stack them all on top of each other. It comes out to almost exactly 1,000 pages. Where I'm like, I got 1,000 pages where I talk about owls and UFOs, and like people say, "Hey, Mike, can you write another book about owls?" And I'm like, "Nope, I don't need to write another one. Like, if I can't say it in 1,000 pages, like I didn't make there's nothing I'm going to be able to say. I could write 20 more books. It'll all be the exact same stories over and over again. And so that's what's on the screen now is my third book is titled Hidden Experience. That's a collection of blog posts. And that more than the other ones reads as a memoir of my coming to terms with my own contact experiences. So oddly enough, that third book, the people who people who have never had like UFO contact kind of read that book and they get back to me like, I don't know, I didn't know what to make of it. It's some kind of and then people who have had the UFO contact experience get back to me and said, oh my God, you're speaking my language. Like you put into words what I have struggled to say myself. So, and then there's a book in the middle. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, we're just about out of time. So.
Oh yeah. So So, and then there's a book in the middle. That's the second book. It's called Stories from the Messengers. And it's a collection of 18 short stories that I could not fit into the first book. So
okay, awesome. Well, I recommend all three, and I know I have my reading. I'm going to look at that third one, and I hope, Mike, that you will come back and join us for part 2 of this, because I think this has just been fascinating. I want to thank everybody who's been with us tonight. As always, if you have a UFO experience encounter, get it into MUFON. I want to thank our producer, Bill Skywatcher, our assistant producer, Amanda Kieran. Thank you, Amanda. This has been awesome. And Katie Cook and Krista Perno and Mike. This has been an amazing show. And next Thursday night, we will have David Toon coming in. So I hope you will all be back for next week. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. A great rest of your evening. And thanks again, Mike, for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
My honor. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.